Hello, everyone. Thank you. Welcome for being here at this week's live stream. I am beyond excited to have Lisa Haggis, founder of Realize Your Brand, with us today. She's bringing some critical information that I know you've been wanting, and this is about branding your thought leadership. How do you create that framework or that model and brand it to you? So, thanks, Lisa, for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited. I don't think I've done an interview on this specific topic before, and it's
Okay,
one of my favorites.
Okay, great. Tell us a little bit more about yourself so everybody who's listening can just know what your business is and how you are helping people. And then we'll launch right into really tactical stuff about how to apply this to your own business. But please introduce yourself.
All right. Well, I am Lisa Haggis. I'm a brand strategist, and I help business owners who have reached that point in business where they've outgrown what's worked for them before. So their website, their offerings, their audience, how they're showing up, and they're ready for that next level. And so we are your rebranding partners when you want a complete reinvention or evolution of your brand and how you're showing up. My company is Realize Your Brand, and we work specifically with service-based businesses.
Okay, well, this is great because I know that we have those people that are watching this episode. I just had conversations with people earlier today and a couple of clients last week, and they're like, okay, service based providers, they're HR consultants, they're mindset coaches, they're whatever, a lot of people in training environments. And they're like, I've kind of hit my plateau. Like, I can't fulfill any more work. So I'm excited to be talking a little bit today about how you can realize greater potential within your business. How can you take something that doesn't require you to fulfill and kind of recycle your content into this new and great offer that's on brand and on message. So I'll be weaving kind of lens throughout today's conversation. And on that note, let's launch right into what we're going to be talking about today. And that is, and I'm getting my thing up here and running. Awesome. So this is about preparing to launch. This whole series of lives are about how to launch. How do you get what you're already doing and turn it into something different while still leveraging your thought leadership? And so we have something coming up I want to share with you. This is brand new. We have a live training on March the 31st at noon. And we're talking about passive income and how to scale your business leveraging the power of a 4-module course. And this is really interesting because it can be the foundation for licensing your content. It can be the foundation for a new training or a group coaching program or platform. So lots of opportunity there. And we're going to be training you about that based on our experience in that from our clients. So I just wanted to plug that. But thank you, Lisa, for being here. In case you missed it, in the last few weeks, we talked about how to start up a new project, a new course, or a new offer, how to validate that idea before you dive in and start throwing resources at it, how you can actually pre-sell that course, and who's your audience, who's your buyer, and who's your learner. And today we're talking, as you know, about branding your thought leadership and what is the key to a substantial brand? What's the unique framework or system that you have that builds that brand? How do you use that framework then to build your offerings out and your marketing? So thanks to Lisa for being here to provide this expertise. Also, there is a free download at the end of this live stream. I'm going to give you a link. We're going to be working through this document and just kind of using it as an example. But we've got a great worksheet that we're going to be walking through that's fillable for you. So stick around and grab that link. I'm your host, Manya. A little bit about me. If you're new to this space, I'm a teacher, a corporate trainer, former freelance curriculum designer and learning consultant. And now I help entrepreneurs who are ready to create learning offers, online learning offers that are structured to deliver a great experience for the learner first and foremost, and also be the right business model that suits you. So that's the work that I do from a service perspective and have lots of ways to learn and work together. So contact me if you want more information or support. What would life look like for you if you were in a position now where your course was already created? If you already had an offer that was on brand, that was clear to your messaging, and really transformed your audience? people are tired of just general information. They want transformation when they're working with you. So, what would that feel like? Would you maybe have more time freed up to do the things you want to do, to have the lifestyle you want, to be able to go out for lunch with friends or pick up your kids from school? What does that life look like if you're not constantly hustling and trying to fulfill client service work? It could look slightly different for you, leveraging your existing expertise, the thing that makes you amazing. And so just hold that potential in your heart as we go through this and picture how life could be slightly different in your business. So I'm going to turn it over to Lisa because I want to get really tactical here and talk about what are the elements of building a great brand. So over to you, Lisa.
Awesome. Okay, well, let me warm up into this. Because what you see here are the three elements of a substantial brand, which is my methodology. But I want to explain why it exists. Like, why do I have this method?
Mm-hmm.
So, a lot of people think of branding and they jump right to the superficial. So they
Mm-hmm.
think of logos, design, maybe copy. And so when a lot of people are ready to kind of show up and build that brand presence, they dive right into those pieces. And when you do that and you bypass this piece where you really dig into who you are as a business, um, you end up either being the same as everybody else, or not fully being authentic to you, or with a business that's pretty general or generic and uninteresting. And so
Mm-hmm.
I came up with this system because I noticed a lot. Well, actually, I was in a marketing role and I had to market businesses that hadn't done this work. And as a result, we're kind of the same as everybody else when you dug below the surface.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that you're taking people who are considering building courses and you're having them take a step back first to think, well, you know, what goes into that you're not just creating a course that's going to be like everybody else's. And for me, branding is really that conversation, those decisions that you make early on that ensure that there's no way your business is going to be like anybody else's. There's no way your offerings are going to be like anybody else's, because you've established these core components, and you've asked the right questions really early on. And so those questions, those components of your brand or your message are these three things. Every brand that is marketable or innately interesting has these three ingredients, these three aspects. The first is meaning. And so before you venture into creating your course, putting your marketing out there, etc., you need to make sure that part of your message comes from your heart, that you have that you really have a reason for why you are creating this thing in the world that will connect with other people, that
Mm-hmm.
you've asked yourself, why does this matter? How will this thing matter? And so that's number one. Number two, yeah, go ahead, Manya. You're going to
Yeah,
jump
no, I
in.
love this because this really aligns with a lot of people who follow along with both you and I. We're very much purpose driven people and purpose driven businesses. And I think none of us want to create something unless it matters. We're all pouring heart and soul and tons of time into this thing, and we want it to matter. So I think this is awesome. And I can't wait to dig into this a little bit more tactically with you.
Yeah, and something I want to point out too is that a lot of these, like of these three components, we all gravitate more easily toward bringing in some of these things into our business than others.
Hmm.
And you're right, like our people, the meaning part is easy, but it's these other two where they tend to get tripped up a little bit.
Okay.
And so value is like, that's your traditional marketing message. That is making sure that you are creating something people want and need, and that you know how to communicate it. You know their language, you know
Mhm.
who they are, what they're looking for, so that you can put things out there in true service of them and
Mhm.
connect with them. And so you need to have that value component. And that means knowing what problem you're solving, what your promise is, and the transformation that you're providing. Um, do you have anything on that
Yeah,
before? Yeah.
no, that's great. I'm really trying to just soak in and absorb this because these really are so foundational and have to be set up and established before you start launching into something? Because otherwise, you can just end off really heading down the wrong track.
Absolutely. And the thing with value that I want to point out before I jump to the next one is what gets in the way often of us having a real clear sense of our value, the promise we provide in the transformation, is the fact that we, before we have that really fundamental piece, we start worrying about how we will do it differently.
Mm.
And we start trying to be different and differentiate ourselves. And all of this that I'm bringing up, like I came up with this model kind of in response to seeing the advice that's out there, because a lot of people will tell you to focus on only one of these, or they put all the emphasis on one over the other. And so there's such an emphasis out there on, being different, that a lot of people are forgetting to be relevant. And
Mhm.
so value needs to come before originality. And I really want to kind of put that out there because even as a brand strategist and a positioning consultant, originality comes after value, not before it.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So originality is pretty straightforward. Once you know the transformation you provide and why you're here, like how you're here to serve, then it's time to ask, how do I do it differently? And have a clear sense on your unique point of view as a business owner so that you can put it into a unique approach. And yeah, I was just going to say what we're going to talk about today,
Mhm.
that unique approach that really lives under the realm of originality.
Cool. And originality is, yes, it's marketing, and it can also extend into what's the delivery model going to be or the learning experience. A lot of people might be thinking, oh, Munya, like you're talking about, you're running a boot camp in the spring about how to create a course. Like, isn't that so passe, been there, done that? Yes, in a lot of ways. And it's also like a really good like foundation that you can use as a place to innovate from. You can your course could be a series of podcasts. It could be audio examples. It could be anything. It doesn't have to be your typical video worksheet style. It doesn't have to be. It can be really creative and original. And that experience has to come though after you've figured out how will you matter, what's the value, what do people want and need first. And then you can get a little bit more blue sky or, blue ocean um with your delivery model or the originality of how you're going to present that content.
Absolutely. And I love that you use the word innovate, because really like that's what the originality piece is. Like when you think of a brand, and this is really again the essence of this substantial branding method. When you think of a brand, what you say about them and what you share with other people, it's always the ways they're innovating and
Mhm.
doing the unexpected or breaking away from the norm. And so the originality piece is critical. And it is about innovating and doing things differently, not just sounding different or looking different.
That's great. All right. So before we go away from this, I want to ask you, how would somebody approach this process or model for themselves? Let's say they're thinking about, I've got an idea for, a new revenue stream, or I've always wanted to make a course. Like I'm currently, you know, um, I'm going to use my husband for an example briefly here. He's a police officer, but he's super into fly fishing. He's really good at it. His hobby is tying flies, and he loves to guide, people in the river and catch fish and all this stuff. So he's kind of thinking about transitioning at some point out of his work. So, I said, well, why don't you do more of this guiding? Why don't you, support people with this fly fishing? So if that was his pivot and he wanted to now create something on the side that he could transition, how could we walk him through this exercise at the very beginning? Is that a good example to use?
Yes, I love it.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do this.
Okay.
Okay, so and I want to point out like that you would go through this at the level of your entire business
Yes.
first. So
Yes.
if you have multiple offerings or whatever, you do it right at the top.
Yes.
And if your business is that you guide people through fly fishing experiences, you're looking at the business as a whole before
Yes.
looking at the um, so some questions that we would ask in the realm of meaning are like, what does fly fishing mean to you? Why, like, what
Mhm.
does it really create in your life that you care about?
And so is this focused more on me as the entrepreneur, or is this
Yes.
faced or is this positioned on my customer? What does this mean for my customer?
I would focus on you as the entrepreneur first. So for fly fishing, I'm going to put some words in your husband's mouth. He might
Yes.
say that it is the most peaceful hour of his day. For
Mhm.
example, it might mean that it is the place for peace and
Mhm.
stillness and leaving the world behind and quiet. And so, what you're hearing are values. I
Mm,
value peace. I value quiet. I value getting away from, like, unplugging. And really, like, the values are those are the key ingredients to the meaning component of the brand, are your core values, what you
okay.
care about. And so you'd ask the kinds of questions that would get you to those values, like, what is your idea of like a perfect life for you? What does success look like for you? What breaks your heart about the world that you wish you could, help
Mm.
evolve or heal or fix? So we want to get to the bleeding heart within,
Okay. I think that's
essentially.
so cool. Love that.
Yeah, yeah, and a lot of people get kind of confused about the fact that there's values and then there's
Mhm.
value, but when we're
Mhm.
talking value, we're talking more about a brand promise.
Yes.
So I'll point that out. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's go. Let's say, yes, the meaning is how you will matter. So that makes a lot of sense in this situation. As a detective, as a police officer, you're always dealing with all this trouble and you see all this chaos, and you can see that there's healing and connection to nature when you're standing in that river and it's really beautiful and there's an eagle that flies overhead and there's all this, challenge in the water with the fish or whatever. So I can see how you can really understand the core values here and what they care about and get that out on
Mhm.
paper.
Yeah, and so moving into value, we would be getting a little more focused purely on who you're serving. And so we would be asking from the perspective, and often we would really be going out to those
Mhm.
people and saying,
Mhm.
well, what appeals to you about fly fishing? Why do you want to learn fly fishing? And we might get the exact same answers. And that means that we've got messaging that kind of serves multiple purposes, but we might learn something else, like, oh, fly fishing is something that gives me a feeling of accomplishment, like I'm mastering a skill. Or, I want to do fly fishing because it's going to become a family tradition. And so we hear from their voice, their point of view, what fly fishing is going to enable them to do in their life.
Mhm.
And that gives us what I call like the big promise, like the
Mhm.
big transformation. So they go from being a beginner, you know, like maybe hating the experience and wondering if they'll ever be able to find this enjoyable, to feeling that they've mastered a skill, they finally accomplish that peace and that blissful time with family or whatever. And so we've created that transformation. But the other key piece to value, which is really important, is you need some more concrete mini transformations as well.
Mm.
And so here's where we look at some of the problems they're encountering when they're trying to do this thing. And so, for example, for fly fishing, some of the problems might be around gear. Like, you know what? I've wasted so much money trying to master this craft. I don't want to spend another dollar. Like, tell me exactly what I need. And so we could have these smaller
Mhm.
promises of value, like,
Mhm.
get the right gear the first time. Um, and and I like to point out that there's this big master, like, grand promise, which provides that umbrella for the company brand. But these smaller promises are really key because they make it believable. Like if I say to you, I'm going to help you build a legacy brand, you're going to say, ooh, amazing, but you're not going to believe me. But if I
Mhm.
start to tell you how I do it by helping you establish your methodology, by helping you, land your messaging and understand your unique position or whatever, build your marketing thought leadership platform, then
Mhm.
now I'm talking your language, like of where you actually are. And it's the same thing here. It's like the brand promises that, are already kind of representing where they're at are a really important part of the value messaging so that it makes it believable and concrete to where they are now.
And I love this so much because this is absolutely parallel to the work we do when we're actually creating an offer that transforms. So we're looking at that overall transformation, but then we're looking at the tactical things along the way. So, the environment, the tools, any strategies, mindset, skill development, habits that need to be formed, because these are all part of creating that overall transformation. And it comes from conducting research with the audience. And we talked about this in a former episode. And we're going to go deeper into this because if you start building something based on what you think your audience wants, you often get off track. And it's when you do this research and you really get grounded in what do they want? What's the deep need? That's when you get something that is actually transformational.
Yes, yes. And then moving into originality, this brings in kind of the added piece, which is if you, as a brand, as a thought leader, you don't want to just take what you're getting from your audience
Mhm.
and give that back to them. That's lacking a certain sense of leadership and a certain sense of, really defining who you are and your unique methodology as a business. And so within originality, that's your opportunity to get clear on how you want to get them from A to B based on your unique point of view. Um, and so I'm gonna focus here on how do you get to that unique point of view, because to me, you'll hear me say like your how you stand out and build a brand is not based on your personality, it's based on your point of view. And so this is really
Mm.
like, and many people skip this step and they jump right to marketing messaging or whatever. But you need to look at that transformation. And so for your husband's example, how he has his experience
Mhm.
of how he went from a beginner to an accomplished fly fisherman, and that's based on that experience. He has a point of view on what worked, what didn't, what he really wish he knew before, what it means to him. The values are a part of your point of view too, and maybe he's taken some bad advice
Mhm.
and tried it and it didn't work, and he's like, people need to know like that doesn't work. Or maybe he's noticed things, like maybe he's noticed that some people need to learn one way and some people need to learn another way. And so based on his experience, he's got like core beliefs which
Mhm.
form his point of view on this craft of fly fishing. And those beliefs are what will ultimately build his thought leadership platform, because he can start sharing that information with people to help them get themselves from A to B, or to understand why the ways that they've been trying will not get them there.
Okay.
And so that's step one, like that, like getting clear on what you know about what your client wants that they might not know, or may in fact even be, receiving the opposite guidance and information. That's what you need to get to when you're establishing like how you will innovate your originality.
Okay, so say that again,
Mhm.
because I think that was really the key that you wanna drive home. So just if you could say that one more time, I wanna capture that.
Yeah. So, well, I don't know exactly how I
I
said
think
it,
it was
but
get clear it was like the reverse, basically, is what you were trying to say.
yeah, well, what I'm saying is, yeah, you need to know what it is that you that your client needs to know in order to get from A to B.
Mhm.
And it and oftentimes is going to be the opposite of what they've been told or what they're trying. And so you need to ask, like, you need to go through a discovery process with
Mhm.
yourself to extract those core beliefs or insights that you have from your experience that they need in order to succeed at what it is they want.
That's great. That felt really, really clear. I love this. Okay, so continue to take us through this journey. Are we leaving this model or are we gonna uh, summarize this in some way?
I think that this actually leads us really well into the next model.
Okay.
So we
Oops.
can.
I just did something weird there. My apologies. Okay, so here we go. I've got too many screens and too many buttons. So there was a roadmap that you typically lead through.
Yeah, so what we've just gone through is those are the three, ingredients to building the messaging and the strategy of your brand as a whole.
Hmm.
And so we went through that, and then now we're going to start talking about how to bring that into a methodology that would help you launch your course
Okay.
or any content really,
Hmm.
and or any kind of offering. And this is something that, like, this is, not something that I've really shared a lot, so we kind of have the opportunity here
Yeah,
to
hash it out a
dive
bit.
in, passion together. Yeah, exactly.
I'm excited.
And so I put your promise in there because it's a reminder that before you start brainstorming, how you're going to innovate or how to get people somewhere, you really need a clear idea of where you're getting them.
Hmm.
And so you have to have that promise. And something that I want to point out is, in order to have that promise, you also need to know who your people are.
Hmm.
They go hand in hand. And so really we could say this is your promise and your people, but you need to know who your people are and what they're dealing with in their life. So if your husband wanted to launch this business, he needs to know whether he's um, building it for men who have retired and love the outdoors, or women who hate the outdoors
Hmm.
and have never done something physical in the outdoors in their life. Like, very different audiences. Or let's
Yes.
let's switch that: women who are like love the outdoors and really really accomplished, and then men who hate the outdoors and have never done anything outdoorsy in their life. I like that
Right.
little.
And like who just need to connect with nature in some sort of way. And they
Exactly.
never have and haven't figured out how to do that.
Right. And so, for in the one case of like somebody who struggles with the outdoors, doesn't love it, but they want to kind of, uh, uh, wake up the adventurer, that loves the outdoors and has that rustic grit. That would be the brand promise. It's like, become that grit, adventurer that, rocks your fly fishing or whatever. Whereas in the other example, somebody who loves the outdoors, it's like add fly fishing to your already extensive list of, outdoor passions. And so you have to know who they are and what this means to them in order to have the right promise that speaks to who they are and where they are. And so we don't have to go any deeper into that. It's just a point to know that when you know your people, you can get clear on your promise. And
Yes.
sometimes you need to know your promise to get clear on your people. And they kind of go back and forth like this.
Okay. This is great.
Um, so from there, you know your people, you know your promise. Now your point of view, this is that originality piece. You've asked yourselves question. You've asked yourself questions like, what were my keys to success when I had this journey? And I want to make a note of caution that doesn't mean that you should just like create a carbon copy of what got you there and make that your methodology. And I believe that's what a lot of people do.
Hmm.
um, that's just one input, because not everybody is you. So then you
Hmm.
want to step back even more and look at all of the resources you've taken in. Like, you've probably read all kinds of books and things on the topic. Like, what have I noticed are the keys to success for other people when they're on this journey? What have I seen not work, or what didn't work for me, even though it's a really like commonly spouted bit of advice in this industry? Um, like, what do I wish people would just stop trying or stop talking about?
Is this sort of like to create a counter narrative
Oh,
in a way?
totally.
Yeah.
Yes, this is 100% like your
Yeah.
count. Yeah, it's like, for me, like at the core is that it's not your personality that sets you apart,
Mm,
in your brand.
mhm,
And that's pretty counter. Like
mm.
everybody thinks that it's about amplifying your personality. Um and I come out with something very different. And so yeah, it's like what do you see that other people don't see? And then um I like to just like put that into a whole bunch of beliefs. Like here's our core beliefs as a brand. And it can be, like a few pages long of like
Mhm, I
what
could
you
see that.
believe. Absolutely. So from that point, let's move forward. So now you want to turn it into something useful. And the first thing that I like to do is develop an approach. So the difference between an approach and your methodology is that your approach is kind of like bullet points of rules or principles that you live by. And so you can see that your values are very heavily going to come to life in there, because if you
Mhm.
value, authenticity is one of my values. And in my approach, like I base brands on the truth of who a person is. And
Mhm.
so it's like that is a core rule. It's like truth-based branding is what it takes to be rooted and solid and substantial on solid ground when you are putting yourself out there. And so there are rules that like you take some of those core beliefs and those values and you bring them together into like maybe 5 bullet points of how we do this, like
Are
our
these could we say
principles.
they're the guiding principles? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Guiding principles for how you do it.
Mhm.
So, some examples for that, I have a client who's a professional organizer. And after years of doing piecework for people and doing hourly and a closet here or whatever, and then seeing it unravel, she
Mm.
set a principle, a rule in her approach. We do whole home. We do the whole home only.
Mm. Mhm.
And that, you can see that that's starting to form a bit of an innovation, because that's not the norm in her industry or in her city. And so she's setting herself apart by being, the one that really takes the stand for the whole home experience, because
Mhm.
that's what lasts. And so when you have these points of your approach, you need to have a reason for them.
Mhm.
Like, we do the whole home because it's what lasts. I do truth-based branding because it's what you need if you really want to put yourself out there. And so you have to have a reason that will resonate with your people, that aligns with what they want.
This is this is great. I love these guiding principles, and I keep thinking, how can you kind of lift and shift this, and what are the parallels when we get into courses? And it's the same. Like you should be establishing this approach or guiding principles when you create learning. Like, I only want this course to or I want this course to emphasize practice, or I want somebody to be able to do something differently. And I don't want this to just be another information dump. Like, you should have these guiding principles that align with your values. Why? Because I don't think, when I create a course for my own business, I don't want it just to be another course that people buy and don't do. So that becomes a huge guiding principle. How do we make sure that people get to the finish of this thing? These are important, because to me, I don't want to sell something that doesn't get used, So
Yeah.
yeah, it's wonderful to establish these guiding principles in your brand, which really filter into your offer.
Oh, totally. Yeah, like I would say, whatever principles you come up with, they're going to be true on the macro level, and then
Mhm.
you bring them into everything.
Everything.
Your marketing, your courses, your offerings, how you lead your team. And that's what starts to create interesting twists and innovations in other places too. Like you might, you might have to do something then differently than you would have in order to be true to that value.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's going to spawn innovation.
I love that. That innovation can just be born out of this. You don't have
Hmm.
to force it.
Yeah, exactly. Like you'll have to, and
Mm-hmm.
if and so and something that I'll point out is your purpose. When I like early on in my branding kind of like when I transitioned from marketing to branding, what I was super fascinated with was this concept of purpose-based branding. And it was the same thing. You
Mm-hmm.
have a clear sense of your purpose, and to stay true to that purpose, you might have to really shake things up and do things differently. And so you need these principles, these guideposts that force you to innovate.
Yep. And force you to create something that's, going to be aligned to your reputation as well. If you're building a reputation, you want to make sure that your offers are all aligned to that promise that you have for others. That's great. Okay, are we ready to
Yeah,
head
yes.
into the methodology box here?
Yeah, so the difference, your approach is kind of those guiding principles. Your methodology now is taking those guiding principles, taking your unique point of view, taking that promise, all of it, and putting it into a model of some kind that turns it, into an asset, really. Like
Mhm.
your approach is great for your thought leadership and for sales. You want to be talking about that approach when you're making your sales, but your methodology is an asset. Like if you can take that and you can put it into something that you can make visual, or you can, obviously we're getting to turn it into a course or something like
Yeah, like a
that.
trademark.
Exactly. You could, yeah, it's your intellectual property.
Yeah.
And so I have a number of different approaches, to taking all of this and bringing it into methodology.
Mhm.
And often with clients, like we go through all of it. Like you don't just have one core, like you might have a core piece of methodology, but methodology lives in lots of ways. So you've already seen lots of examples of mine just in this conversation. Like
That's
there's the
right.
three elements of a substantial brand, and then there's this approach to getting from the promise to the methodology. But I have a specific kind of flow or sequence
Mhm.
that is really not the norm that I share with potential clients, to say, you
Okay.
know, in in our kind of rebrand experience, the marketing and the website come last.
Yeah.
Like when we look at methodology and offerings first, which is usually skipped over entirely. And so
Mhm.
like to have that visual of this is our rebranding journey, it's something that I can communicate, but it would also form a basis if I were to create a course on it, because we would go through those steps. So
That's right.
I'll just kind of share some different takes on this, and the idea is to do them all so that you can see which ones are really feeling, I guess, compelling or sticky to you, that you would actually run with.
Okay.
And the first one is ingredients. Like, so what, so if we were to take the example of fly fishing, which might be a little limited in this case, but maybe not. Like, what are the ingredients to a successful fly fishing experience?
Yeah,
Um,
so, that's gonna be the river conditions, your equipment. Are we getting tactical?
just put a few more down, and then I'll kind of.
Yeah, river conditions, equipment, the flies you have, the types of fish running at the time, um, your some of your gear, right? If you have the right boots,
Mhm,
your fishing rod, your ties. It might also be, being at the right place at the right time. It could be, your skill set. or technique?
So what we could do here, and so what this is good because this is like a brainstorm of just
Yep.
what's true.
Yes.
And then what you do is you look at how could you turn this into something that super simplifies it, like in many cases oversimplifies. Like you
Mhm.
have to be willing to oversimplify. And so you could say maybe we're looking at internal conditions and external conditions. And that could be a model. So if he
Mhm.
wanted to, he could look at, here's 3 core internal conditions and 3 core external conditions. Boop, 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 boop.
Right. Yeah,
And
because it could be like, time of year with the weather, the river condition, the type of fish that are running at each time of year. Because these are really key.
yeah,
Um,
and
mhm.
what's important here is like you might think, well, why? Like, and I know a lot of people look at methodology, and I hear a lot of things like, oh, I hate alliterations, and you
Mm.
know, a lot of people think methodology is just cute, but it's
Mhm.
not, because what you're doing is you're taking something that's confusing and overwhelming, and you're turning it into something that's much more easily remembered, digested, and understood.
Yep.
And there's huge
Well,
value in
and
that.
alliteration or, what is it when you have I can't even remember at the moment, but, like, when you have a word and you use each letter to
Yes.
start your thing, an anagram or something, is that what it's called?
I
Um,
Yeah, I know. I'm not even gonna, because I'll come up with something that's not at all
it
right.
feels corny, but it's actually my methodology is based off of that because it's easy. It's Boost, and that's the Boost method of learning design. It's the background, it's the outline, it's the offer, it's the system, the tech. Like it's this full circle, and it
Exactly.
feels very grade 2, those of us 80s babes. Or maybe even late 70s, where you wrote your name down and you put like Munya Marvelous, like and I don't know if you remember
Yes.
doing that, but I don't know, you remember it. It's rememberable, it's memorable, I should say. It's easily understood because it's a little bit more visual.
Yes. Yes. And like it really, like, I just really want to underscore that, like, there's value to you doing this for your people.
Mhm.
Like, people, if I gave you everything I knew about how to build a substantial and compelling brand, you wouldn't be able to remember any of it, but you can
No.
remember meaning, value, and originality.
Mhm.
And so that's why you do this, is because it makes your thought leadership and your knowledge and insights actually have more impact and be more useful.
Mhm.
um, and so that's huge. Another, so that's the ingredient piece,
Mhm.
and if you like, really, you have to play with it to get there.
Yes,
um,
there's creativity here. This is where, working with an expert like you is really helpful and valuable because you've got that creative element and you can help, you know, add to that brainstorm. And often it's easier to get somebody objective to support with that.
oh, absolutely, yeah. Like, with a lot of my clients, I come up with this based on, like, I just listen, listen, listen,
Mhm.
listen, see the patterns, and then I am able to just, like, here it is.
Yeah, and people are like,
And
"Whoa, how did you
yeah,
know that?"
exactly. Well, and there's brains that do this naturally, and
Mhm.
that might not be your brain.
Yep,
And
and
that's
that's
okay.
okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
Amazing. So maybe give us one more tip here in the methodology
Yeah.
bucket before we move on. I'm just loving this conversation. It's so tactical. It's so practical. I love that.
Okay. Well, the one I'm going to give, like, the other example that I'll give is like, um, the so there are 4, so I'm just going to give the 3, but I'll keep them at
Okay.
a really high
Okay.
level. So the next one is that sequence that we talked about. Like, what is the journey from your point of view that is maybe different than
Mhm.
what it usually looks like? And so that's the next one.
Okay.
Uh, Then there's the idea of like some kind of maybe typing system. And
Hmm.
so an example of that one is, if you might be familiar with Sally Hogshead, and like she's got the fascination advantage where she has all these different archetypes on how you fascinate people.
Mhm.
And so that's an example of like that's a pretty advanced methodology, but I've had clients do that. Like, what kind of minimalist are you?
Yeah.
Or what kind, I have that too. What kind of brand creator are you? And so having like different categories of people so that you can tell them what they uniquely need is
Yes.
another way to do this.
Good.
And then the last one is a special tool. So, is there like a hack or like a shortcut that or that works for you, that works for your clients, that you can put a special name on? I follow a woman in the kind of mind body healing space, and she created a technique called journal speak. And essentially, it's like spilling your guts out. But she
Okay.
put this name on it, and she has the reasoning why it works. And so it's just become her, like a tool that she has, that she's created, that she's named. And
Well,
that's methodology too.
and my clients use this a lot, especially when they're working as, consultants with an organization or an individual, or they've got a special kind of, coaching tool, like you say. These are really useful, to be able to brand, and they belong to you, and it's the tool that works well. So absolutely, I can see that these are all really important components of one's methodology.
Mhm. Yeah.
Ooh, that is gold. There's a lot of gold in there. Um, the next slide is gonna be surprise. I can't even remember what I put on it. Oh, yes. Okay, so as we're kind of getting close to wrapping up almost an hour, which is incredible that we've even been talking for 45 minutes, I wanna just ask the audience, if this hits you in the gut, like, "Okay, I know this is missing. This is the foundation that I don't have." Or maybe you've been in business a few years and you're like, I'm ready to take this up a notch. There's stuff I want to move beyond this test era of my business. Like, I know what I'm doing is working and I need to get this into something more, or I need to take this into an offer that can start to work without me having to fulfill it. You need this foundation, you need this basis before you get going into creating a course or anything. So, if you want to continue developing this journey until you have a clear brand and offer, I would really encourage you to reach out to Lisa. She's a great place to start, even before you start working with me in some cases. So, I just want to encourage that collaboration. I really trust Lisa, and I think you should absolutely reach out to her. You could keep moving forward on your own. You could create your website, try to kind of trudge through this yourself. You could create a course yourself, and that's fine. You probably will do a really good job of it. But you could run the risk of being in the same place next year with no course, wasted time, a new website, that you launch that still isn't quite right, that doesn't feel like you. So I would caution you to that. And I don't want you to feel offended by your own inability to create well branded learning offers. This has become a bit of my own kind of like tagline. Don't be offended. Like, Lisa has spent years in this industry doing this, years of practice working with clients. The same with me. I've created hundreds and hundreds of courses. So don't be offended if this is your first time it's not working. Don't get mad at yourself. There is a great opportunity coming up to join us about just the inspiration around what can you do to grow your business at a scalable rate. We're not talking about piling on more clients here. This is, how can you take what you're already doing and recycle that content? Take that thought leadership that you've been doing, get clarity around it, and build new revenue streams on that. So I would really encourage you to join us. Send me a message if you're interested in this, and I will give you the link to join. Um, And every Monday live here on LinkedIn for the rest of this month, we are meeting and talking about what it takes to get prepared to launch new offers. And we have a workbook. So, this worksheet that I've been filling out, if you want to do this on your own, please go to boostld.com/livestream_worksheet. Please go there and grab this. And I would highly encourage you to connect with Lisa here on LinkedIn. If you aren't, send her a message if you liked what you heard, or myself. and let's get in touch. And Lisa, thank you. This was absolute gold. I love that you brought such tactical ideas and you shared so generously with us your process, which I can't thank you enough for. This is exactly the foundation that you need to lay before you launch that business or rebrand or take that new offer to market. I'll leave you with the last word though, Lisa.
Yeah, well, I want to say thank you so much for having me. Like, this was just a dream to like a dream topic for me. Really geeking out. Yeah, I just want to encourage people, to understand that you have a lot more to say than you think you do. You have, you have all of this insight within you, and so, don't for a second don't let those voices kind of deter you if you think everything's already been done and that there are no new ideas. There are people who will benefit if you
Mhm.
step beyond that and you find your way to put it out there. And so, I want to offer that, and thank you again so much for having me, Manya. Really a pleasure.
Thank you. I love how you said that because that's my word of encouragement as well. You can do it. We're not special, but we do have well-proven processes that we know work. And I think both Lisa and I have really creative brains for brainstorming. So there's value there in partnering with somebody who can support you in this journey and help you achieve this dream a little bit faster, this dream of a more scalable business or an income stream that doesn't rely on you to fulfill it based on a brand that has lots of integrity and is aligned to your values and your voice. So thank you so much. It doesn't cost anything to book a call with either of us. So please send a DM. We are here to support you. This is how we show up in service to you, our audience. So thanks again for joining. Um, and we'll see you next week live here at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thanks again.